Okay,
Perfect.
when you're ready.
Perfect. Thanks, Heather. Welcome everyone to this evening's planning meeting. As Rosemary isn't able to make it, I'll be chairing in her stead. As we haven't got any members of the public present, I'll skip over the niceties and move straight into the bulk of the agenda, if that's okay with everyone.
Yep.
So firstly, apologies for absence.
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Farmer.
Perfect. We need to resolve whether or not to accept those, don't we?
Yes, you do. Yes.
Can I get a show of hands, please?
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? I can't see any hands. If you spot a declaration during the meeting, do raise your hand and let us know. Minutes of the meeting of the Planning Committee held on the 27th of October 2020. Are we happy to take those as an accurate record? If we get hands.
Thank you.
Perfect. Do we have any public questions in accordance with Standing Orders 22 and 23?
None received, Chair.
Perfect. Do we have any letters of objection?
None received to this meeting, Chair.
Perfect. In that case, we shall move straight into the meat of the meeting, item 6, which is applications registered week ending 23rd of October, 30th of October, and 6th of November, which I believe starts on, if I can find the page.
Is page 13?
Yeah.
Page 13. It's helpfully the one that's gotten stuck on my agenda. There we go. Page 13. Perfect. So the first application this evening is 5/2020-2232 at 2 Browning Road, Harpenden. Officer observations.
Right, okay. So we have some pictures for this particular property, if you don't mind, Hev.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Right, so this property is currently a detached single-storey dwelling, which is sited on the corner of Browning Road on a fairly large plot. The road consists of properties which have got varying designs and styles, and I think the majority of them, from what I could see, all of them actually appeared to be 2 stories in height. Some of the properties along the road had roof velux windows, but they didn't seem to be going any taller than actually 2 stories. The application states that it proposes to replace the existing property with a detached 2-storey dwelling, and at present the property hosts 3 bedrooms and provides parking for 3 vehicles, which includes an on-site garage. No parking provision is available on the road, as double yellow parking lines are present outside of the property. You can see the property here, which is showing the single garage and the bungalow, or the single-storey dwelling. So the proposal shows that the same amount of parking is being offered, with a single integral garage being incorporated into the dwelling. There is an increase in bedrooms in the new application from 3 to 6, and the overall size of the proposed dwelling has obviously increased. The proposal is to be set on the original footprint of the existing building, with the roof line set to fall away from the neighbouring property in order to reduce any impact. The proposed ridge height is approximately half a metre higher than the neighbouring property, allowing for habitable roof space and dormer windows on the front elevation. There are no rear-facing windows, with the exception of one which has been set in a recessed area of the first floor elevation, and therefore there appears to be no loss of amenity to the neighbours at 110 Station Road. There are no trees within the vicinity of the proposed new dwelling. I've suggested consider that although this property is slightly larger than the rest of the properties in Browning Road, due to its positioning at the beginning of the road, considering the size of the plot and having no detrimental impact on neighbouring properties, it provides adequate parking provision in line with policy 40 of the St Albans District Plans and it meets the policies of the neighbourhood plan, there is no objection. Now, however, there was one letter that was on the St Albans website, which I found today. It's not a letter of objection, it is a letter of comment and query that basically says, and it's from a gentleman from 67 Station Road who notes that it is not proposed to remove any trees or change the existing access. However, he would like confirmation that the existing boundary hedge between the property and Browning Road and Station Road will be preserved, as it appears to be indicated on the development drawings. He also states that there is a radio mast on the property, which is approximately 50 feet high, but it doesn't feature on the development drawings. And is it intended that once the development is completed, this mast will no longer feature on the site? So there were just two things that he picked up, which, you know, particularly the mast, I couldn't see. So there are two things that convinced he'd need to consider. I would point out that opposite this particular plot, there is a huge house, which seems to sort of more or less copy the proposal.
Thanks, Mim. I mean, I personally, I had a brief look at it. I think I couldn't see anything that was particularly objectionable. Did any committee members want to comment on anything? Paul Decourt.
Yeah, I just want to actually talk about the radio mast. I would have mentioned it if you hadn't had that letter in. It's a cause of a lot of comment from passers-by, residents, or whatever. Not of that, because it certainly seemed to grow in size. And I can't remember when suddenly there was a much bigger one. It is a really tall radio mast. You can actually see it on that Google Maps picture. It's lying in front between the property and the bush and the zebra crossing. I would say that most of the comment is negative about its look, so I could see why that person who's written in and is looking to see if that would go. Then I think they would obviously view the thing probably better. I don't know what the planning rules are about 50 foot antennae, but maybe Nigel knows because he's got his hand up. I don't have any problem with the property development itself.
And I have no idea about radio masts. I agree. My initial reaction was not very favourable until I looked at the plans and also the elevations of the proposal. And my reaction is it seems to fit in with what else is around there. So I see no reason to object to it. Subject to maybe adding, we want to see the hedge, etc., retained. We could always put that in.
So
could we?
Yeah, no, so I would agree with that, Nigel. So something along the lines of no objection, subject to retention of the boundary hedge, or something along those lines. With regards the radio mast, would that be something that we would want to pass comment on at this committee? Something like we were pleased to see that in the plans there seemed to be no indication that radio masts would be retained, and you know, we'd like to make sure that remained the same, or would that not be something that people would like to add in? Paul Cousin.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I don't know. My feeling is that there probably is something that governs radio masts, that I guess it's a hobby, isn't it? And I'd be surprised if it needs planning permission, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same owners and they do use it. I could imagine that they might have left it off the plans because it almost falls outside the planning process. So I wouldn't guarantee that it's going to go, but I'm not sure it is. I don't know, but I don't know if it is something we can really specify. I've never heard of anyone. I mean, lots of people comment, as Councillor Decourt said, and I've never really, you would imagine over all these years, someone has looked into it. And I've never heard anyone say they're breaching any planning conditions.
That's true.
But it helped me identify the house, definitely. So, you know, seeing it, because it's very noticeable. But yeah, I don't know. I'd be surprised if we can mention it.
So in that case, do we want to go with just no objections subject to the retention of the boundary hedge?
I think
Um,
Councillor Pippa.
Does Pip want to talk?
Sorry, Pip.
So will they be able to build the house and reinstate the mast?
The mast is on wheels. It's on a sort of like a trailer. So as long as there's space for it in the new property, and I suspect there would be, there is the potential for it to get a bit closer to the next neighbour along on 110 Station Road, I would say. So whether they, I don't know exactly the plans. If they reinstate it, I think it will be closer to 110 Station Road to fit in than it is currently, where it's in the middle of the grass area to the side facing Station Road.
So it's not on the roof. It's not on the
No,
roof.
it's on the ground, it's on the grass level,
Oh, okay.
on a big trailer.
So it's a temporary type construction.
Yeah.
But I was driving up Station Road just the other day, and I thought that area looks way much bigger than it used to do.
That's what I had heard. And one of those things when your mind goes with I'm sort of saying, I've lived there a long time, very near it.
Yeah.
Is that a lot bigger than it used to be? And I think the answer is yes, but I don't exactly know when the bigger installation was brought in
It's
there.
about a year ago, maybe.
Yeah, I
Mm.
think possibly. Yeah.
I can certainly ask the question with planning, query it as to whether, they would need planning permission. If it's only been there for a year, then it might be that it's not been picked up. The fact that it's actually on wheels and it's movable, it might be that it doesn't need to have planning permission because it's temporary and it's movable and so on and so forth.
Though it hasn't looked very temporary in the last year or moved, but I agree. I think that would be good if you could ask, because I think we are then potentially protecting the residents at 110 Station Road, because
Yeah.
much as we have certain planning rules about how close things can be to boundary edges,
Mm.
if that same trailer-based aerial is relocated, given the expansion of the profile of the site, I
Mm.
think it's likely to have to get quite a lot closer to 110.
Mm.
And it might be one of those things that they either don't mind or can't object now, but if it moved there,
Mm.
they might have a problem, loss of their amenity with it being very close to them. And then I think it's better if we've asked the question rather than just they suddenly see it and said, what did the planning committee do? They didn't even think about that thing. So yes, I think it'd be good if you could ask what the situation is there.
Yeah,
The
okay.
unmovable thing, so that it doesn't have to have planning permission.
Mm.
Point of it.
Yeah, no, that's if we can ask the question and find out what the law is on
Okay.
movable.
In the
Very
meantime, how do you want to base your recommendation?
So my inclination is no objection subject to the retention of the boundary hedge. Would we all be in favour of that? We can get a show of hands.
Thank you.
In that case, if we move on to 5/2020-2234 4 Salisbury Road, Harpenden. Officer observations.
Okay, give you a second. Right, okay. Right, so for this one, I haven't actually got any pictures. Now, this one is an application. It's a resubmission of a proposal which was previously withdrawn by the applicant for a part single, part 2-storey rear and 2-storey side extension, a loft conversion with a rear dormer window with a Juliet balcony, and extension of a rear decking area, which after consideration, the committee recommended no objection. The proposed changes for this resubmission are for the removal of the loft with the Juliet balcony. The remainder of the application remains the same. So I've suggested consider no objection. However, looking on St Albans website, there was a letter received from the neighbour at number 6, who has stated that she has got concerns and raises 2 issues which still stand with the original application. And she's concerned that the extension, because it's built up to the side boundary, and because it's a 2-storey, which is built to the boundary, it's going to cause problems with light to her 2 upstairs windows at the side of her house, into her upstairs hall, and even more so downstairs, where the window to her front door on the side of her house, being the only sources of daylight in her hallways, will cause problems. Also, with the whole length of the house extension, and also going up 2 stories to the roof in height at such close proximity to the boundary, this is going to turn the path to my front door into a dark alleyway and permanently cut the amount of daylight in my hallways, both downstairs and upstairs. She says, I get the late afternoon, evening sun, depending on the time of year, through the front door and these windows, and this will be gone forever. And also she would get reduced privacy on the patio. So she's therefore raised concerns. So it might be that you might want to sort of relook this one again. And it might be that we just need to go onto Google Maps just to have a quick look at the property, if you don't mind, Hev.
So this number.
This is 4 Salisbury Road.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, at the very least, I'd be inclined to repeat the subject to no loss of amenity line from last time. But if we can take a look at the property on Google Maps, that might be helpful. Also, we lost John.
We have lost John. I don't know why. I didn't send him away.
No, that's fair enough. He's probably having technical difficulties of some description.
Right, he's back. Okay, so I'm fairly sure that it's this image here. Is that right, Mim?
No, it's the one the other side, Hev.
Okay.
Just past the van. So it's this one. This is yes. So this is number 4, and the one.
This one's number 2, Mim.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, because there's a number 2 on the door. So I think, from memory, from when I looked at, I think it was at my meeting a few sort of meetings ago. This is number 4 here.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So it's still right up to the boundary then again. Okay, yeah. So I can see. So she's got a side door. Yeah.
Is the boundary with that little garage, or is that little being absorbed?
They're going to incorporate the garage.
So they're going right the way up to presumably the edge of. Sorry, literally very close to that neighbouring house, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's going to be a 2-storey, so they're going to go right the way along. I mean, we had no objection last time.
So the garage is going to be demolished, and that will all be 2-storey house.
Yep, 2-storey rear, 2-storey side extension.
And the person that's concerned is the person that owns the house with the blue garage door.
Yeah, number 6. Yeah, so you can see. I'll show you.
Do you want me to try it, or are you gonna? Okay.
You want me to? There you go. Can you see? So that's the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Nigel, you've got your hand up.
Just looking at I'm looking at the floor plans. I noticed the redevelopment proposes extension at the back only at the ground level, not the first floor level. The first floor level looks coming out towards the boundary. It's not going any further back at the back of the house, from what I can see. So I suppose the question is, how far back are these windows in relation to the single-storey extension area? Can anyone get the floor plans up? Or is there a site plan of the adjoining properties?
Yeah, let me just have a little look, see if I can find something for this.
Yeah.
Okay, if I look on the block plan and see if that's of any use. Okay, yeah, that might be quite good.
Can you find it?
Yeah, found it. Yeah, I'm just, you have to click a few things to share screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so that might help. I'll just zoom in a little bit. Oops. Does that help?
Yeah, so they're
Yep.
going. Are they coming forward? It looks no, they're not coming forward, but it's quite far forward already. The rear extension is that sort of pinky? Is that pinky? Is that the
That's
ground
the-
floor extension? Sorry,
Yeah.
that's
That's the ground floor extension.
yeah.
Where are we?
I mean, it's clearly very close to that house and to those windows. So it wouldn't seem too much of a stretch to express concern, one could argue, but I'm happy, go with whatever.
Any other views on this particular development?
I'd express concern.
Yeah, I think I'd be inclined towards express concern based on potential loss of amenity to neighbouring properties. Specifically, I wasn't sure I didn't catch which number the property was that we were concerned by.
Number 6.
Yeah, so I think if we say express concern based on potential loss of amenity to neighbouring properties, particularly number 6, or whatever the appropriate wording for something along those lines would be. Does that sound? Would committee agree with that recommendation? We can get a show of hands.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. In that case, we'll move on to the next one, which was 5/2020-2213, 15 Tinten Close. Apologies if I butchered the name of that one. Officer observations.
Right, okay, we've got just one picture for this one, which is the front view, because I couldn't get any really good sort of bird's eye views on this one. So this property in Tinten Close is set in a road which appears to have different design type properties which are grouped together. The proposal presented is for a single part first floor front extension, which will allow for the entrance door to be moved to the front of the property from its current side position. Proposals are also for the garage to be made into habitable accommodation. In order to accommodate this, parking provision is enabled along the side of the property, where you can see there's parking provision along the side of the property there, where there appears to be sufficient space with 3 vehicles with another space at the front of the property. Due to the positioning of neighbouring property number 13 Tinton Close, and with there being no windows on the side elevation of this property, as you can see from the picture there, the proposed 2-storey element does not appear to have any adverse impact on its neighbour. The overall design, in my opinion, improves the appearance of the property and does not adversely affect the street scene. Overall, the proposal meets the objectives of the Harpen Neighbourhood Plan and the St Albans District Plan. Consider no objection.
Just to clarify, I'm assuming it's the property on the right of the two, or is that one property?
That's one property.
That's one property, but it's just the way.
It's the way that roof line is. It makes it look like 2.
Yeah, I think it's Mr. Google man, sort of like the camera's gone a bit.
Yes. No, sorry about that. Yes, does the committee, do we have any comments on this particular one? John?
Sorry, I lost connection a couple of minutes ago. My question is, if they're building up on the garage, does that have any impact on the light of the next door neighbour?
No, I couldn't see that there was any type of impact at all. It didn't seem to be. I don't know. Can we have a look at the picture
Yeah.
again?
Sorry, bear with me a second.
I think it was due to the positioning of the property. I think it's, if you look at the property, if they build up there, I think that because it's that first bit set back, it will bring it in line with the neighbouring
okay.
property.
Okay. It just looked to me like it might have an impact on the upstairs bedroom of the house on the left, but if it's set back, it might just be a perspective.
I think
Okay.
it'll bring it in line with the building line.
Okay, that's fair
Okay.
enough.
Yeah, the only concern I would have is that window on the very small window on the side of that property next door.
Yeah.
But I think we can cover that off with something like no objection, subject to no loss of amenity to neighbouring properties, which usually does the job on the concern. Does anyone have any other comments, or should we move to a vote? I can't see any hands. In that case, shall we vote no objection, subject to no loss of amenity? All in favour?
Okay.
Agreed.
Perfect. In that case, I think 44. Yeah. So the next one is 5/2020 2230 Tufnells Way. Officer observations.
Right. Okay. Can we have some pics, Hev, please?
Yeah.
I think we've got a couple for this
You
one.
have indeed.
Right. Now, this one I sort of had a look at and I wasn't overly sure about it. So I went for express concern. The proposal is for on this bungalow with the cat slide roofs and the two dormers on either side, which you can see in the middle of the picture. It's for a single story front extension with roof lights, which measures 3 meters in depth, alongside alterations to openings on the property, which is set next to a single story dwelling. The host property appears to be set slightly forward of its neighbour's building line and therefore suggests that the proposed single story extension may impact on the neighbouring property due to its positioning. And I was concerned that, as you can see from this picture, if you put the single story dwelling where this hedge line is, on the host dwelling, if you put a 3 meter extension there, I wasn't sure because it has a, I call it a pointy roof. It's not a technical term, I apologise for that. But it might impact on this window of the smaller dwelling, and those were my concerns, that it might actually create a loss of amenity. So I leave it to councillors to think about that. But yeah.
Paul Cousin.
Thank you, Chair. If we leave that, if we look at that, okay, that's that screen there you had.
Yeah.
I just had a question about, can we go back to that view? Okay. I mean, I share the concern that was just raised, that I think a 3 meter front extension might look a little bit odd and out of, not only loss of amenity, but possibly out of character. But I just wondered whether the very far right, where there's the house to the right of the black car, and there's a window there, isn't there? And it's white with a window. I don't know if people see what I mean. Whether that itself was a forward extension.
I don't know.
Do you see what I mean? I just wondered, but
it
would seem
I don't think it was.
No.
I think when you look at the street scene, I think they were all very similar, if I can remember rightly. I don't think there was an extension
Let me just
the same.
Okay, fine. Well, I think maybe what is proposed is perhaps slightly out of character.
I show you.
Yeah,
That's
this one, actually, hang on a moment. This, if I show you this one here, this actually shows that it's even this, the host property is actually set further forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they're staggered, actually going along backwards. So if anything, the house to the right of it is further back.
Do we know, because presumably 3 meters off that drive is at least one car, probably more than one. Do we know what the parking ends up looking like relative to the number of bedrooms?
Can we go on the first picture, Hev?
Yeah.
I think the parking was fine and there was going to be no change to the actual bedrooms themselves. And I think there was sufficient parking on the drive. It's quite a long drive, so I don't think it would have made too much impact on the drive. I think if you've taken 3 meters off that, you might. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, I suspect it's deceptively long.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I mean, as when you're looking at the picture next with the car next door to it, it's hard to tell unless you.
Yeah.
Tell you what I can do. Do you want me to go on to? Let me go on to actually Google Street
Go
View.
to Google, yeah, because I
Can
mean,
I tell you later?
the actual application says that the parking arrangements won't be changed and it won't affect the parking, but
That's Hilly for you.
Right, so
Nigel, you're not on mute.
Sorry, can I pass comment? May I?
Nigel.
I've been off mute, but I wanted to pass comment. I've looked at the block plan for this, and patently whoever drew up the plan is conscious about bringing it forward, because you'll actually see the 45, one assumes it's the 45-degree line from the windows of the house next door that sort of goes through the corner of the extension, which would make me think, yeah, it's touch and go as to whether it's coming too far forward. There is a block plan.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I think, as I say, I think at the very least, it's definitely right on the edge. It's whether it's beyond the edge, if that makes sense.
From this angle, you can see the potential risk to the car provision if it needs to
Yeah.
be 3 cars.
Yeah.
How many bedrooms they've got. That makes it a bit clearer. And you take 3 meters off the front, I wouldn't have thought you could get more than 2 cars in without blocking the pavement.
Yeah, you're going to reduce it.
Yeah.
So we should at least comment on that.
Yeah. How many bedrooms does the property have, out of interest?
4.
4. So it needs at least 3, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would be inclined to say that we go with the expressed concern about the loss of amenity to neighbouring properties, but also about the parking, so potential for insufficient parking provision.
Yeah.
Did anyone have any further comments that they'd noted that they wanted to make? I can't see anything. If we proceed with a vote on that basis, express concern based on loss of amenity and parking provision, all in favour?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. In that case, if we move on, 5/2020 2206 17 Queens Road does not meet the criteria for consideration. 5/2020 2226 18 Highfield, officer observations.
Okay, we have some pics for this, Hev, please. Right, so this one, okay, so this one is basically a proposed application on a property which is set in a road of character houses interspersed with a few bungalows. The proposal is to replicate the changes approved for the attached neighbouring property, number 16 Highfield Avenue. The proposed Part 2-storey rear elevation has been pulled in away from the neighbouring property in order to eliminate loss of amenity, and the proposed size of the rear dormer window complements that of the adjoining dwelling. All roof lines and ridge heights match those of the adjoining property, as does that of the suggested rendering. The application shows an increase in bedrooms from 3 to 4, with parking provision being suggested at 2 spaces. The existing plans show a garage at the rear side of the property, which will be lost. No trees will be affected by the proposal. I've therefore suggested that the committee consider that although no objection to this proposal is in general, concerns are expressed with regard to insufficient parking provision to meet the requirements of policy 40 of the St Albans district plan. I think, have I got another picture here?
This one here.
Yeah, so this is showing the attached dwelling, which it's going to mirror. But again, you can see that they don't have a lot of parking provision either. So that might well be a bit of an issue. And so I think we need to flag it up about the parking. But the overall application proposal in itself isn't a problem.
Yeah, no, that seems fairly reasonable to me. Does any committee members have any comments? I can't see any hands unless I've missed. Oh, Paul.
Yeah, it was just a question. It's about the parking, but also the fact that the neighbouring property 16 Highfield Road has had changes approved. Was that? Did we make comment on that one about concern about parking provision? Do we know that?
I don't know offhand. I just looked at the fact that the application got permission. I looked at what it got permission for and whether it mirrored it, but I didn't look at our comments, unfortunately. I apologise for that.
No, that's all right. I just think that I appreciate you take each one on its merits, but no, if it's been recent, in the time of the neighbourhood plan or whatever, we should try and be consistent, because it does look as it's the same issue for either one. But yeah, I'm very happy to go with concern about the parking.
Is there a way we could just check the comments that we put in for number 16?
I can give it a go. It may have been some time ago that the application was approved, but bear with me a second and I'll give it a go. This is number 16, is it? 16?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't make a note of the application number, Heather, unfortunately.
It doesn't matter. Okay, I assume it must be this one here. It was approved 2 years ago. Right, I found the little documents. I'm just waiting. Okay, so this one, I'll read you the description of it. Part single, part 2-storey rear and 2-storey side extensions, roof alterations, a rear dormer window, front roof light and alterations to openings following the demolition of a 1-storey side and 2-storey rear extension. And this, we just said it was resolved and no objection, subject to no loss of amenity to neighbouring properties. Policy 72.5 of the district plan affairs. So no comment was made on that application in relation to parking.
And sorry, just to clarify there, Heather, was there a garage being lost like there is in this one?
Let me just.
Seems likely, given how it's mirroring it.
It doesn't seem to mention, and it just says following demolition of the 1-storey side and a 2-storey rear extension. Does not make any mention of a garage.
If there's been a 1-storey side extension, it may well be that they've previously demolished the garage.
Okay. Yeah.
Either demolished it or potentially had a change of change of use to it, a habitable room or something.
Should we go with basically we haven't changed the recommendation from the officer observation, so it's although no objection to the proposal in general, concerns are expressed with regards to insufficient parking provision, etc. All in favour of that?
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. The next one is 5/2020 2227 at 90 Cowper Road. It's a certificate of lawfulness, so no comment is required by the committee. My papers haven't fallen properly. There we go. 5/2020 1982 38 Lower Luton Road does not meet the criteria. Neither does 5/2020 2099 at 20 Langdale Ave. 5/2020 2251 at 36 Park Rise. Officer observations.
Okay. Right, this one hasn't got any pictures to go with it. It's basically a proposal for the same scheme as an application that was raised in 2018, which was given permission by the LPA in July 2018, but with a small change. The new proposal incorporates a cat slide roof to a small single-storey side projection, which will house a utility area and extended kitchen area. No other changes appear to have been made, so consider no objection.
It seems relatively straightforward to me.
Yeah, they're just putting a cat slide roof onto a small single-storey side extension at the side of the property. It won't affect any neighbouring properties at all. I didn't have a problem with it at all.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Do any committee members want to make any comments on this one? I can't see any hands. In that case, should we vote to consider no objection?
Yeah.
Perfect. 5/2020 2266 14 Salisbury Avenue does not meet the criteria. Neither does 5/2020 2267, also at 14 Salisbury Avenue. Next one then is 5/2020 2295 at 16 Holcroft Road. Officer observations.
Right, can we have some pics for this, Hev, please?
Yeah, right now.
Thank you. Right, now, this proposal, the laid out in the application are to demolish an existing conservatory, utility and outbuilding, and to replace with a two-storey side and part single, part two-storey rear extension with roof lights. The proposed single-storey extension is to be sited next to the neighbouring property, with the proposed two-storey elevation sited towards the outside of the property. It appears that the rear extensions would have no detrimental impact on the neighbouring properties and that no trees would be impacted either. This particular dwelling, as you can see, is positioned on the boundary of Batford Nursery School in a crescent-shaped road. Parking is limited in this area, and this property shows an existing on-site parking provision for just 2 vehicles. The proposal shows an increase in bedrooms from 3 to 4, with suggested parking provision only showing 2 parking spaces. The overall street scene for this particular part of Holcroft Road displays limited on-site parking space availability. I've suggested consider that although there are no objections to this proposal in general, again, concerns are expressed with regard to insufficient parking provision to meet the requirements of Policy 40 of the St Albans District Plan. And I have particular concerns with regard to, you know, if they wanted to park on the road, there's children in the area coming out of the school, and I don't know whether there would be other vehicles trying to park for the school, etc., and it could cause overall problems.
Yes, no, I think, I mean, off the sort of first look at it, I would suggest that we might move towards a more traditional express concern, because as you mentioned, the parking provision in this particular part of Harpenden in particular is not ideal, particularly being so close to a school. Committee, do we have anyone like to comment on this particular application? I can't see any hands. Oh,
Paul Cousin. Yep. And Paul Cousin. Yep.
we have both Pauls. Who was first?
I think Paul DeCourt possibly.
Paul DeCourt then.
Yeah, I'm not sure I was. I think Paul was first, but as I'm on now to save the time, I want to just echo what Matt said. I think we have to be particularly careful around a small school that does get very busy. They have some parking provision off-site at the moment. If they want to expand, then I think they need to address the issue, in their design of their building, whether that be an integrated garage or something else. And I think if this parking provision criteria is in there for anything, it ought to be for things like this.
Yeah, no, that's I think that's perfectly reasonable. Other Paul.
Thank you. Well, okay. I mean, I go here every day because this is Batford Nursery where I take Henry, my 3-year-old. So the horseshoe is residents parking only. So there shouldn't be parents dropping off in that horseshoe. And there is a car park for the teachers. So although the area in general is quite busy with drop off, pick up, the horseshoe, shouldn't be, and it's not too bad. It's quite nice because of this residents parking zone. All the houses there are fairly tight. They're not big houses. So there's a limit to what you can do with them in reality. And obviously this is bound by the school playing field. There's one car park there normally at the moment, a Land Rover, I think, from memory. And I guess in reality, this is the same family wanting to live there. So they're probably doing this isn't going to make any more parking issues, I suspect. But I know that we have to kind of we'll want to be consistent with other applications that we have, said the same thing from. So I think we have to be consistent, but in reality, it's perhaps not as bad as it might seem.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd say on that is that there's always a possibility that the current occupant moves on and you end up with someone with slightly more vehicles in that property. But I think unless anyone else has any comments, I think express concern's probably a good middle ground, I would say, for us to land on. Any further comments? I can't see any hands. In that case, should we move to a vote with the recommendation express concern based on insufficient parking provision? All in favour?
Yep. Unanimous.
Perfect.
Yeah.
The next one is 5/2020-2307 28 Brackendale Grove.
Right.
Observations.
Okay. This one again, I've got a couple of pictures for. Thank you. This property, I'll explain the road. This is the house here with the it's already got a front extension, 2-story extension on it. It's set in a road of very similar style properties. However, some of the properties have started to diversify by adding 2-story front extensions, which is what this property appears to have done previously. We've got another picture, Hev, which shows properties further down the road, which you can see are already starting to change. This new proposal is for a first floor front extension to be placed over the garage in order to extend bedroom 2, and will be set back from the garage pitched roof, remaining subservient to the original extension. It is also set back from neighbouring property number 26, Brackendale Grove. There are no side windows on this property and therefore will have no detrimental impact. The single-storey rear extension falls within the side and rear building lines and has no detrimental impact on any neighbouring properties. Parking remains unaffected and there are also no trees on site which will be affected. I've suggested consider no objection.
It seems relatively straightforward to me. Does anyone have any comments? I can't see any hands. In that case, shall we move to a vote on the recommendation of no objection? All in favour?
Is that everybody?
Yep, unanimous.
Yep. Thank you.
Perfect. In that case, let's move on to 5/2020 210. Sorry, is that 2107? 4 Crabtree Lane. Application does not meet the criteria required for consideration by the committee. And then 4/2020 2292. 5 Linden Court. Officer observations.
Right, right, I've got a few pictures for this one. Now this one, this is a property which is set in a block of 5 terraced houses which side onto Ayresgarth Close, sitting up, sorry, on a higher elevation than these properties. The proposal is to remove the existing conservatory and to build a 2-storey side extension and a part single, part 2-storey rear extension, which will enlarge the house from a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom property. It's unclear regarding parking provision for this property, although the plan appears to show 16 parking spaces, which is presumably for the 10 houses on the site. However, it's uncertain how these are allocated. The planning application states that parking will remain unaffected. Now, can you show which picture? Oh, right. No, this picture here is from Ayresgarth Close, and you can see the rear of 5 Linden Court. So you can see where it's set up high. You can see the back of the conservatory, I believe, and you can see that they're going to be building right up to the boundary, which is set on a bank. So the property, from the first picture, it was very difficult to find a really good view of 5 Linden Court. I've suggested recommend refusal. The application appears to be an overdevelopment of the site. The proposed 2-storey side extension, which appears to be built up to the boundary, shows a property which would be overbearing and out of keeping with the existing properties in the area. There have been no details of parking provision included in the application for the increase in habitable rooms. The application therefore does not meet the criteria required in policies ESD1 and ESD2 of the Harpenden Neighbourhood Plan and policies 40 and 69 and 72 of the St Albans District Plan.
Thank you, Mim. Yeah, no, I think I mean, Milton Road's in almost entirely paid parking as well, I think. So it's not like there's on-road parking that they could fall back on. And I think you're probably right that it is an overdevelopment. But do committee members have any comments? I can't see any hands.
No.
Oh, no.
Thanks, Chair. Is there an overall site plan? I looked at this before, and I've got some cryptic notes because I think it's overdevelopment.
Okay.
And I've got a number 4 next door. I've got that written down, whatever that means. Subsequently, is there an overall site? I must have looked at an overall site plan. Because to me, it was.
I'm just searching now. Right, here we go.
Thank you.
This one here. Right, is that? I'll try and zoom in a bit.
I think that shows it. Yeah, does that show it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think that's quite a
Yeah, if you look at the way they're going back the way into the rear garden as well, I'd have thought that impedes on the amenity of number 4.
Mm.
Yeah.
Is that 2-storey at the back, or is it 1 story, like ground floor?
2-storey side, part single, part 2-storey rear extension.
So where the little square is, which I guess is it a dormer window? So closest to the neighbour, that's maybe single story.
That's a single story. Yeah, that's single story, and the 2-storey part is nearer to Ayresgarth Close.
Well, I still question whether it's overdevelopment.
Mm.
Sorry, I very briefly froze at that point. Does anyone else have any comments that I have missed in the interim? No. In that case, should we move forward with a recommendation of refusal based on overdevelopment and based on the lack of parking? All in favour?
Yep, unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, in that case, if we move on to 5/2020-2304, 6A Morton End Lane, officer observations.
Okay, we've just got one picture for this one. This property is sited in a street with properties of varied styles and designs set in the Harpenden Conservation Area. The proposal is to extend at the rear of the dwelling to enlarge the family and utility areas, and to extend at the front of the property on the first floor elevation in order to increase the size of one of the bedrooms. There are to be no additional bedrooms. It's also proposed to strip off the cladding and to render the whole of the building. The garage is to be utilised as a store and study, and therefore parking will be reduced down to 2 spaces. Overall, the proposal appears to improve the appearance of the property in the conservation area. However, I have expressed concern with regard to the reduction in parking provision and any impact this may have on the Harpenden Conservation Area. There doesn't seem to be a very long driveway, and I think with loss of the parking as well, I just think it might have some impact. So I was expressing concern. There were some amended plans submitted online on Friday after the agenda had gone out, but having looked at them, they just show amendments to the kitchen area, just internal amendments, and nothing that will affect any neighbouring properties or anything like that. So nothing major.
No, that seems fair enough. Paul Cousin.
Thank you, Chair. Is this, sorry, I don't know the road. Is this a conservation area?
Yes.
I just wondered, are there any feelings about, totally rendering a house in a red brick house in a conservation area? I mean, I think of a lot of Harpenden houses as, red brick. I mean, may have some render like the one next door, but a certain character. And I don't know, but if it's a conservation area and you completely render a house, then I just wondered if it's slightly at odds with a conservation area, but I don't know.
I think it depends what is actually along the road and whether it fits and so on. It's certainly not a listed building, so I think it's just down to the conservation area officers as to whether they feel it's fitting and whether they would make you use conservation materials. I'm not overly sure.
I think I'm right. If it's the part of Morton End Lane that I'm thinking of, I think there's a couple of properties there that have already been rendered. I'm not 100% sure, but if it's the bit of the road I'm thinking of, then certainly I know there are some on that road. Nigel.
Thanks, Chair. I think you're right. There are 1 or 2 properties there, and it's a really mixed road, but it's also a very narrow, windy road. So I would be concerned about the parking. On the other hand, when you look at the width of the drive, they would only have to take in a foot or 2 of the grass, and they'd have enough space to put 4 cars in effectively, or certainly 3 cars. I'd have thought. I think the parking problem to me is easily overcomable. And if I lived there, I'd not be wanting to park my car on the road. It's pretty narrow.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be parking at all on Morton End Lane if I can help it. But yeah, no, I think you're probably right. Does anyone else have any views on this application? I can't see any hands unless I'm missing someone. In that case, do we want to proceed with the vote, express concern with regard to the parking provision and any impact this may have on the conservation area, etc.? All in favour?
Okay, thank you.
Unanimous.
Perfect. In that case, we're back to the next item on the agenda. My agenda pack has just walked off for a moment. Give me a second. Which is the appeals, which we had number 20 Pennycroft. I think which, if it's the one I'm thinking of, is the one that they'd submitted a second application for, that we looked at was it a couple of weeks ago or slightly longer ago than that? But it appears to have been, the appeal for the original application appears to have been dismissed. So just for noting, I believe this one, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, just for noting.
And then we've got various trees in the preservation ordered tree work section. Again, I think these are just for noting.
Yep.
Likewise with the conservation area tree works and technical applications, and the list of weekly St Albans District Council decisions.
Yep, noted.
And then the date of the next meeting is the 8th of December at 7 p.m. by Zoom link. And Plans North is next going to be held on Monday, the 4th of January 2021 at 7 p.m. So thank you everyone for coming along, and I shall see you all again on the 8th.
Wow.
See you in December
Wow.
for our festive edition.
Here we
Christmas.
are.
Okay, I'm going to